a collaboration between the World Bank, UNHCR, and the Center for Effective Global Action in Berkeley. And I'll share some additional results from our panel survey and also touch on an impact evaluation which we've designed based on those survey results. And as just said, I want to put the focus on an angle that wasn't discussed very much so far, which is psychological well-being and how it links to economic outcomes. Now, we've already heard a lot about economic outcomes in the earlier presentations. Many refugees have limited access to economic opportunities, especially in camp areas. Food insecurity, vulnerability to shocks are high. But we know a bit less about psychological well-being. And there's a little bit of literature on the topic which shows that displaced populations tend to be particularly vulnerable to psychological distress for a variety of reasons, including traumatic experiences that lead to displacement, difficult living conditions in camp and in transit situations, loss of family members, uncertainty, the list goes on. So yeah, getting to some of the results from our household survey in Kenya, I think the first very striking one is that psychological distress is very common among refugees and also among Kenyans. We find that, for example, about 40% of refugees and about 30% of host community members, this is across Kenya and urban and camp areas, report that they experience at least mild symptoms of anxiety and depression in the 2 weeks preceding our survey interviews. More generally, we look at a variety of different measures of psychological well-being, and overall, we do find that refugees are a little bit worse off, but that both refugees and host communities have quite substantial needs of support. Another aspect that is quite striking is that the most severe symptoms of common mental health conditions, which really can substantially impact everyday life, are much more common among refugees. Now, the second general finding is that symptoms of mental health conditions do not significantly vary by different demographic groups. Men and women are affected, all age groups, education levels, and so on. However, we do find that indicators of economic hardship are highly correlated with psychological distress. In particular, high levels of food insecurity, living in crowded homes, are highly correlated with the prevalence of depression or anxiety-related symptoms. This is also quite in line with some of the literature that is kind of emerging at the moment, which shows that there's a very clear interdependence of economic and psychosocial well-being, with both dimensions impacting each other. Now, to understand a bit more about this dynamic, we designed an impact evaluation on interventions that aim to improve both economic and psychological outcomes. We implement this particular study with refugees in Kakuma camp and Kalobey settlement in northern Kenya, where our measures for psychological distress and economic hardships are particularly high. And in this study, we offer a bundle of interventions that includes a training component, which first covers a psychoeducation program in which participants learn how they can support members of their family and their community who face psychological distress. So we're not offering any treatment for mental health condition. We are focusing on creating an understanding of those conditions, teaching techniques to support others in distress, try to reduce tensions and stigma around the topic, and try to inform people where they can seek help if they need professional support. The second component of the study is a financial literacy training implemented by our colleagues at Nkomoko. And then finally, a randomly selected subgroup of the people who participated in the training also received a one-off unconditional cash transfer of about $520. While we're still working on the analysis of this impact evaluation, we have some quite interesting qualitative preliminary findings from the discussions with our implementing partners. The first one is that after the training program, the psychoeducation component, we hear from providers of mental health and psychosocial support services that the demand for their programs has gone up quite a lot. which suggests the needs for such services which might partially go unmet because of limited availability, but also because of lack of awareness and social stigma. The second finding focuses more on the cash transfers, and we already know that a lot of the cash transfer recipients first spend a part at least of the transfer on basic needs like food, healthcare, and home repairs. Around the time of our cash transfer, there was a flood hitting part of the camps. We don't know yet, we have to complete the analysis, what share also goes into other investment, such as businesses, education, and so on. But this initial rush to meet basic needs is a strong indicator that basic needs are not currently met for many, which aligns very much with some of the results we showed earlier today. Now, to wrap up, what should we take away from this? I think the first key takeaway for me is psychological distress is a pressing issue for refugees and Kenyans, and there's a need for mental health services. And due to the link of psychological and economic outcomes, the extension of mental health services might not only have positive impacts on psychological well-being, but also on economic outcomes. And bringing it back to cash transfers, I think from some of the presentations we've heard before, but also our sort of very initial results, it seems like cash transfers have transformative impacts for some people. But for others, more multifaceted programs might be needed to support them in their transition to resilience and sustainable livelihoods. And for that, combined programs that tackle multiple challenges at the same time have the potential to be very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. I think though these particular observations are being observed from what is being done in Kenya, I am in safe ground to say that psychosocial issues would affect many displacement communities across our various regions, whether they are IDPs or whether they are refugees. And so there is a need to actually see how exactly then do we support these particular populations in the aspect of psychosocial. I'm going to invite 3 questions from the audience now, because there are four questions from the audience. If we happen to have 2 questions to one person, so be it. Then I will invite reflections from 3 people in the audience from the 3 countries represented here to just know what's going on. And so we have the first question in this table. Then we have another one on that particular table. And because the microphone is near there, let's begin there.
Thank you. Very interesting. My name is Rita Larocque from Uganda. So I have too many questions, but I'm going to limit to Emmanuel and Antonia because it was very interesting, a panel. And I also like that you stood there the whole time as a moderator. So Emmanuel, I'm really curious. I live in Uganda, so I know what you're talking about around the situation with delays in the transfer. But one of the first things that came to my mind listening to you was, should I tell my employer to give me all my salary and my annual salary at once so I can roof my house? And I was thinking, asking a colleague, and he said, we will be dead by June. Clearly, I think depending on the size of your cash, you might want to reconsider whether you want to give it all at once. But related to that, because we ran a program where we gave $300, but we did a lot of intensive coaching and preparation. It was unconditional, but the expectation was that somebody would start a business or expand it. 96% of that 13,000 population really started a business. 4% did not, and they did some of those things you are saying. For example, roof the house and help my ill husband get care. And then later on deal with the business. As a livelihood program, you're looking for productivity. We were disappointed with the 4%, but we were happy with the 96%. My question is, for this group, 4 years later, a big proportion of them having these results sustaining because it was an RCT. But a certain type of group of people will not, of course, sustain. So what does it look like for you in the long term? I can see productivity, I can see income. In the long term, what does it look like? And do you have any worries at all about that 2% of bars? It just looks like 2%, but maybe many people are flocking those bars quietly. And what does it look like? But to go to the direction of Antonia, I am recently a psychologist, so it's very exciting when I hear about psychosocial and mental health stuff. Uganda is similar. We have about 40% depression, anxiety among refugees, and even hosts. And similarly, we did an RCT, just to tell you that at midline, we did a group interpersonal therapy versus a coaching module that integrates psychosocial. The truth is, at midline, both populations had similar results. Depression, anxiety reduced on both ends with no differences. So in short, if you had to go forward from that midline result, we're waiting for endline, don't invest in an intensive mental health program. If especially your coaching and psychosocial activities that you do can significantly reduce mild symptoms, I'm not talking about severe. So while we wait for your results, which I'm very anxious to see, I think that in terms of going forward, if we are thinking about economic inclusion program, if you wanted to do something moving forward, make sure that you integrate psychosocial wherever you go in whatever activities you're doing, because you're going to have certain results that are already positive. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from this, Elijah.
Thank you very much. Really great to hear from the panelists. My name is Elijah with the International Rescue Committee. So, listening to several of the panel members, we've talked about social protection and recommendation on how we can include some of these services through the national programs. I'm just wondering, my mind was running on some of the languages we find in the Global Compact, the whole of society approach, the responsibility sharing, and I know a place like Uganda, there's been discussions around transition and integration, which means the social services like health, water, and education could potentially be infused within the government service delivery mechanisms. One of the areas, as we debate on this, like the social protection, how can we enhance it and integrate it as part of the national government programs? One of the area where we find some roadblocks or barrier is the funding models for this. Because the government would be asking, is this responsibility sharing or responsibility shifting? Where there is no clear demonstration on how, because within the humanitarian, there is a way of providing support to different groups, vulnerable, or different service delivery mechanisms. So your thoughts as panel or any thoughts around as we look forward for sustainability, because it is true, if we infuse things like this into the national systems, there is more sustainability, it can also even reduce cost. But what are our thoughts on the funding mechanisms for these things to be realized? Thanks.
Thank you. And then we can have the last one from that table. I am conscious that people from 256 are the only ones that have asked questions in this.
And Jermaine, I want to assure you I'm not going to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm requesting to stand so that I can stretch a bit. Once again, Godwin, Kampala Capital City Authority. I just want to say that I'm excited this afternoon, this discussion about the inclusivity and now even on the social protection part. And maybe to give the perspective of Uganda, as always, we are ahead. That we are in the final stages of coming up with a national development plan, our 4th national development plan for the 5 years beginning next year. Glad that we have been part, as KCC, myself and Daniel here, and our other colleagues in the discussions of these national development plans. And it has already been accepted that refugee inclusion across the board is one key issue in our fourth development plan for Uganda. So these social protection issues we are talking about, and the services, as you have rightly mentioned, health, education, the issue of livelihoods, gender-based violence, all these services that we offer. And child protection as well, we already are ahead. And I am very sure that this will be soon passed for implementation beginning next year for the next 5 years in Uganda.
Thank you very much. I note that yesterday I heard there is a country that went to benchmark in Uganda in February. And so I hope that particular country is also going to have all these particular aspects of inclusion within their plans, without mentioning my deputy commissioner. So we will have the last question from this particular table, then we will invite the panelists to respond to those.
So mine is just a reflection for Emmanuel, the way he was speaking about cash transfer in regards to Give Direct. So I want to give an example. Even in Kenya, Give Directly was giving a cash transfer. And for what they did to them, to us, is they went through groups, the village and savings loaning groups. So they gave us the money through the members of the group, and what we said among our groups, that even if you're given the cash amount, it was done in two installments. So we agreed that every member of the group has to leave a certain amount of money as savings. So in case for next year, because it was done in December, so when it comes to next year, every member will be able to have savings and continue saving for the next year for you to have at least amount of money that you can be loaned again for the sustainability of the group, of the savings group, and also yourself. So I think that is something you can also incorporate when you're giving amount of money. In regards to what she has said, that you can be given a whole money now, and all of it is you just go either party or something or buy something. But if you're in a group and you know you're supposed to save for the next year and your shares, you'll be able to save it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Emmanuel and Antonia, you can respond to those questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this. I think I have two comments, I think, or two replies. One is it depends, I think, on what challenge or problem you're trying to sort out. People who are going on pension it wouldn't be prudent to give them all their pension at once, because they still have another 20, 30 years to live. So it's probably not. However, subpopulations like refugees who have actually lost a lot already through the forced migration, and they are trying to recover quite a lot of what they've lost. What you're trying to do is, how can you bring them to a level that is closer to the deprivation that has been caused by the war, by the shock, and all this. So you have to adapt to different situations. The other thing is the question about sustainability. I think we all know even Rebuild is not going to be there for forever. Within the next couple of years, I think maybe it closes, maybe it gets an extension, whichever way it's going to end at some point. And once it ends, the question is, now what? You know, I think one thing that, this is not in the research that we did, but one of the ideas I kind of think that we have is create some idea of vital statistics, vital civil registration, IDs, and then link those IDs to programs and support systems. What we have now is that we run an RCT, we do lots of randomization and lots of balancing of different treatment and treatment groups and control groups, but at the end we don't know whether these households are receiving support from other NGOs. Most likely they are. We don't know whether how much they're receiving from these other NGOs. If you go to northern Uganda, there's like a myriad of NGOs, all of them working in these populations. You don't know who's receiving how much support from several NGOs or who's not receiving at all. And you can only know this if you have an ID, a unique number, that makes sure that when Save the Children or Give Directly or IRC or whatever, they come and check, hello, Mr. Rukundo, what's your ID number? Plug in your ID number, and then once I plug in my ID number, I can know, someone can know, so you're already participating in this, participating in that, participating. You're either intensively treated, or you're not yet treated, or you need, that will help us in targeting, but also to help us in continuous observation. Yesterday, I think someone also mentioned something about longitudinal studies. Once these RCTs end that they presented yesterday, continuous observation happens with it. The last thing maybe I think Antonia will also say something on this, on temptation goods. Is investing in bars a bad idea? I don't think so. Someone might think so, but also there's a lot of evidence that shows that cash transfers do not lead to temptation spending. People do not necessarily drink more alcohol because they receive the money. They might drink some, okay? Like after today we finish the conference, we are all tired, we go for a drink, yeah? For that matter, anyone going for a drink, we can go together. But anyway, so
that's a research question. So Antonio.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I think you've covered a lot of the questions. I think one aspect I could maybe add on was on one of the first questions that was asked. I think you gave the example of, you gave this cash transfer and some percentage of the beneficiaries did not end up starting a business, and sort of should we be worried about them? I think for me that's an important example that shows that employment interventions that foster labor market integration, self-employment, such as these large cash transfers are sometimes intended, are very complementary to social assistance, but they don't replace it. There will always be people who suffer shocks to their health, to their family's health, climate shocks that require them to rebuild their houses and so on. I think social assistance programs such as some of the humanitarian programs need to be kind of the safety net that is also there for the ones for whom the employment interventions don't work. So I think it's complementary, and different things will work for different situations.
Thank you very much. In terms of the countries represented here, I know that we have some reflection in terms of what are the social protection initiatives that are including forced displacement persons in our countries. And so to hear from Kenya, how are we including forced displacement persons? And Millicent will be speaking from her seat in terms of some of those particular initiatives that are actually in place.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Millicent Awiti from National Social Security Fund, Kenya. So NSSF, we are working with our partners, IRC, UNHCR, ILO, and DRC. And some of what we are doing is through our informal sector product, which we are calling Haba Haba, which means little by little. We are extending our coverage to the refugees. And because we realized that on our own, it may be very hard for us to mobilize the refugees and sensitize them. So we reached out to our partners. And what we are doing is that we're going to start sensitizations from the 30th of this month. We have identified areas where the refugees are. Urban. We will start with the urban on a pilot basis and then move now to the camp areas. So the product allows them to contribute as little as 25 shillings per day. And then it also states that if you have contributed a minimum of 4,000, you must have contributed at least a minimum of 4,800 Kenya shillings by the end of the year. This product has also been designed bearing in mind the informal sector or the refugees, and because of that, it allows them to withdraw 50% of their contributions after they have consistently contributed for a period of 5 years. Other than that, if the refugee is leaving or going to another country, it also allows them to be able to collect their contributions, and all they need is the letter from DRS, the VELROP from UNHCR, and then they're able to access their benefits. Again, in terms of contributions, making contributions is flexible. They can use mobile phone, they can either submit it directly to NSSF without any other, going through any other agencies. So we are continuously reaching out to different partners, and we have also recently started an engagement with Equity Bank, who are working very closely with the IRC in the Rebuild program to see how best we can reach out. So those are some of the initiatives that we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Millicent. I think next time we'll be discussing about the uptake. We'll be discussing about whether the particular products are actually then linked to social security, because as Brian pointed out, social security is just one of the aspects of social protection. Dr. Kabebe wants to reflect about the situation in Ethiopia, and so please avail a mic to him.
Thank you, brother. I think you meet, sometimes the Ethiopian name is very difficult to pronounce. My name is Debebe, it's not Kabede, of course. You are
apologies,
right.
apologies, apologies.
Yeah. Thank you so much for such a chance given to me to share the Ethiopian practice regarding the social protection. To start, I will touch on the issues of the refugees, but let me start with social protection in Ethiopia. We just considered social protection as a vital tool for fostering national unity, promoting inclusive economic growth, and enhancing the resilience of individuals, households, and the communities. We call it national unity because it's considered as a glue that binds the fabric of an inclusive and a prosperous nation. And allow me, Ethiopia in Africa, where the big social protection is implemented, we currently implemented the productive safety net program, which is a rural that benefits almost 8 million vulnerable people, and also the urban productive safety net program, which also benefits 2 million people, where these programs have considered the Africa's largest social protection program, providing vital support to over for that number of the people. So from this genesis, the government introduced the program for refugees. I would say Ethiopia has long-standing tradition of welcoming refugees, which has been mentioned with my colleagues. As of July 31, 2024, the country hosts over 1 million, refugees. Addis Ababa alone has hosted more than 78,000 refugees from various countries. That reflects, the Ethiopia's ongoing commitment to providing refugees. So what has been done so far? To give you highlight, the Refugee Health and Integration Support Network, we call it in Ethiopia, in Amharic, Timret, has been implemented across 5 regional states, during its initial phase. That is Somali Regional State, Gambela, Benishangul Gumuz, Afar, and Amhara. You know, in this phase, there are almost 81,365 individuals, both refugees and host community members, by covering 8 refugee camps and their surroundings, have benefited from the program. And the second phase of additional financing will extend support on additional 43,335 refugees through public works and livelihood development initiatives. So geographically, this expansion will include 5 existing urban centers like Addis Ababa, Jijiga, Samara, Logia, Asosa, where yesterday, many colleagues have mentioned on that. With regard to the youth employment, particularly for refugees, we call in Amharic Bikat, so that aims to equip unemployed youth with basic life skills and digital competencies while providing them with their first work experience through apprenticeship in private firms. That would give them the chance to compete in the labor market to find their job. So this initiative targets up to 5,385 newly identified young refugees residing in Addis Ababa who are less educated and disadvantaged, where my colleague from Bahir Dar University has already brought up. So these are a few points that I want to add on the research that my colleague from the podium mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Uganda doesn't want to be left in terms of sharing perspectives. And so to avoid massacring anyone's name, please hand over to my good sister to give her reflections.
Thank you. My name is Sotao Lucy. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, Uganda. Uganda has the National Social Protection Policy with basically 2 pillars. There's a component of social security and another component of social care and support. When we look at social security, we have direct income support and contributory. There are also 2. So under direct income support, for example, we have SAGE for older persons 80 plus. This, you become a beneficiary when you have the national ID, so that is exclusive. Don't ask me about refugees. It's under Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. Then we have labor-intensive public works. You perform the work and you're given some financial support. This applies to both refugees and the nationals. Then there is also cash for work. Then there is food for work, especially under refugee settlements, and other grants like for children, orphans and vulnerable children, and for people with disability. We call the disability grants. Under contributory services, we have public service scheme under Ministry of Public Service for civil servants. That means it's not inclusive of refugees. Then we have the health insurance. You contribute, and Ministry of Health also contributes for everyone. Then we have the National Social Security Fund by Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Gender. Then we have the voluntary scheme. You can choose to save with NSSF on your own, and you become the sole beneficiary. Under social care and support services, we have grants for child protection, especially orphans and vulnerable children, for both refugees and nationals. Then we have support for victims of gender-based violence, direct support, or in terms of safe spaces like shelters, GBV shelters, that has comprehensive services provided, legal, social, economic support. Then we have rehabilitation services for youth, nationals, and within the settlements. We have also rehabilitation services for people with disabilities specific. That and includes the nationals and the refugees. Then support for older persons. Apart from SAGE, that is the direct cash transfers, there are other issues with older persons. As long as you are 80 plus, you are going to benefit from the social care and support services. That's typical of what is happening in Uganda. Analysis of how many refugees are benefiting, how many nationals are benefiting. We take it to the researchers next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have been invited to do research on that, and including what Millicent said and what the good doctor said. We begin then looking at next time in terms of what is the impact of these social protection initiatives. How many people are they covering? How are they helping to alleviate some of those particular sufferings that we have? But I think it has been underlined the importance of it, even as that particular question that Elijah asked remains in the air. Is it burden shifting? Is it burden sharing? So thank you very much. I will not say like the earlier speaker that my panel was the best, but the jury is out there. So thank you very much for joining me in the podium today. We will move to the next session to have aspects of reflections. But as I can tell, there's a possibility that your energy levels are low. And so my colleague wants to give us an icebreaker before we move to the reflections. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamin. And good afternoon, everyone. So I've been given this momentous task of ensuring that you are energized and you smile. So you can help me and indulge me, at least smiling at me. Are you smiling at me? All right, good. So it's been 2 days of serious conversations and deep reflections. But as we wind down and get now to the reflections, I'd want you to indulge me for a minute to just, wind down a bit, relax, loosen up, shake a leg. So please, kindly, I ask we all stand. I hope Nancy and team, you're ready. So just create some space for yourself. You can push your seat inside if you wish. So, and I'd like us to indulge the inner child in us. So kindly watch at the screen. So if you're not able to see the screen, look at what your neighbor is doing. If they are doing something opposite, it means they might be having two left legs. So today we want to see whether the people who will get to experience and enjoy Nairobi will actually indulge in this. So let's go. Please watch and do as the video goes.
Thank you, thank you. I think we can stop at that. So I hope to see you in the evening. We practice it more, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for that. So that takes us straight to the reflections when all of us are quite alert. And so Precious, welcome to take us through that.
Wow. No, I can't beat that. Good afternoon. I'm really energized, and I hope everybody is energized. It's been a really enriching symposium, I should say. So maybe let me just start by thanking you for being here, but also for your very active participation. I think we've learned a lot, and there is a lot of very diverse perspectives that have been discussed today. So we are very grateful for that and very excited by that opportunity. The knowledge, I think you will agree with me when I say the knowledge that has been shared here is quite rich, but also quite impactful. So I think this session, just in case you think that maybe I didn't understand the terms of reference, when I look at the agenda or the program, it says key takeaways, summary of outcomes, actions, agreements, and acknowledgement of research. Research needs identified by policymakers for future collaboration. That's a very difficult task, right? So what we've agreed as a team is that maybe we focus on key takeaways when it comes to the policy side. So I hope that is okay, and I hope that you indulge, because we've heard a lot on the research side. I think we agree that there's a lot that is happening, and that in itself is a key takeaway, right? That there's a lot of players, a lot of research, but also a lot of innovations when it comes to the research. There's a lot of research that was presented on randomized controlled trials. Those are gold standard for impact evaluation, as you know. So I think there's a lot of innovations we can agree, and spaces like this are quite important for us to get together and share knowledge and experiences. So that I think we can all agree on. So in terms of the key takeaways for this particular session, as I said, we'll focus on the policy side. And this is how we're going to do it. So we have like 2 slides. These are reflections from some of the colleagues and some of the participants that we sort of had a chat with, but also our own readout in terms of the key takeaways. And then after that, so I'll present those 2 slides. After that, I'm going to get help from my colleagues, Patrick and Neville. So what is going to happen is that after I present the key takeaways, Patrick is going to call on policymakers. I said that the reflections are focused on policy, so we really want to hear from policymakers in terms of their key takeaways, in terms of what we should be doing differently. And Neville is also going to help by just tracking some of the things that come through. Hopefully we get to have an opportunity or some time to also look at some of the gaps in terms of our capture of the reflections. Just to say, this is going to be reflected in the symposium report. No pressure, but it's going to be reflected. So the first slide, please. Okay. Again, caveat, they are not, I'm sure they are not exhaustive. They are just to help us to get started on reflecting around key takeaways from the last 2 days. The first one, I think what we've noted across the countries that are represented here is that there has been a lot of progress when it comes to creating a progressive legal environment. A lot has been done. But I think also the interventions from the policy makers, but also from the research side, is that more can be done. There's room to improve. And I think what we've heard also this morning from the Justice was the emphasis that in terms of improving on the progress that we've made, the first part is to make sure that the institutions that are involved have the capacity to not only to develop the frameworks, but also to be able to implement it. So we improve the quality of implementation, the speed of implementation, and the inclusivity around that implementation. That is the first part that came through. And I think What the Justice was also asking is something that is very important for our set of countries, definitely for Kenya, given the devolved nature of government. So when you look at the roles at national level vis-a-vis sub-national or county level for Kenya, are those roles well understood in terms when it comes to managing refugees? That's the one on the institutions. The second part was on the individual incentives. We've had research, but also we've had policymakers reflect on incentives, individual incentives that might facilitate corruption. So that's an area that, of course, has to be addressed, both at the individual and the institutional level. I think I like the point that has been emphasized that socio-economic integration of refugees is a justice issue. It's a human rights issue. So, of course, there's been some examples or areas that have been sort of proposed as being concrete and practical on addressing access to legal aid services, interpretation services, addressing GBV, which has been highlighted in the last 2 days. That's the first bucket, acknowledging that the frameworks have improved, but that more can be done. The second takeaway is also something that was raised by policymakers, which is around enhancing engagement and coordination. So obviously, I think this says we should not work in silos. It's not the researchers and NGOs working in this forced displacement space on one end, and then immigration authorities or government on the other. We need to engage meaningfully. We need to sensitize each other in terms of course, the findings on the research side, but also even in terms of the plans when it comes to the policy side. So that's number two, the bucket. I think we just list some of the things that came through. Something on the goodwill. I think somebody did say that in some cases there's also resources, but we just need to make sure that the will is there, but also is visible. I remember, I think it was the Justice who said something like that. Creating awareness so that there is no a feeling of suspicion on the part of either the government or the NGOs. But I think also it's important, and I think it's also important for researchers for us to continue to generate evidence to show that there is economic benefits actually, even beyond, of course, of hosting refugees. So that's the second bucket. Coordination, engagement across the board. The third one we wanted to highlight, of course, as researchers, is strengthening data ecosystems. I think there is a colleague from Uganda who sort of shared what is happening on this side, on the Ugandan side, in terms of the links across different data spaces. That's number 3. The other thing that came through strongly, which I think also has implications on policy, is the part on gender. I think what we've heard is that women might be affected differently by displacement, but they might also be affected, face different sets of opportunities. And there could be factors that sort of condition their ability to access certain opportunities. So I think it is important to have something that speaks specifically to the gender element when it comes to forced displacement. That was clear from the research, and we want policymakers also to reflect on that. And I think from some of the programs that have been presented, it's clear that there is effort to really also take this into consideration. The fifth point, which came through quite strongly, is engaging private sector, especially when it comes to jobs, right? We need to address the demand side. I think the presentation that was made in the morning by Mirko, but also other presentations and other panels, this was quite clear. Then the second slide, please. Okay. I also liked, I'm not sure if it was Anthony or somebody who was framing it this way, to say, how do we work together on the research side, but also on the policy making side, to say, how do we present win-win situations? How do we make sure that we work collaboratively to make sure that we present win-win solutions? So how do we make sure the evidence speaks to the incentive structures for policymakers? How do we use the evidence to sort of strengthen accountability mechanisms? How do we make sure that the data and evidence that we are generating feeds into robust monitoring and evaluation systems. Because I think what we've heard is that the right to work or the freedom of movement does not always translate one-to-one in terms of access to jobs and to good jobs at that. Again, there's a point about enhancing coordination, vertical, horizontal. And I think the other takeaway, which I think is also important, and maybe also on the policy making side, it's important to be deliberate about creating spaces to learn across countries. I think what we've heard is that the countries face sort of similar policy questions, right? And in some cases, of course, some research can also sort of provide insights into other countries. But of course, it's important to be context specific. I think that we got the point, but there's a lot of room and scope to learn from each other. So I think policymakers supporting this initiative such as this, which links me to the next point, support for a platform such as this one to be able to come together, share knowledge, and take it from there. Yes, so I think that those are the two slides that we have. So maybe before we open it up to participants, maybe I just call on Patrick to sort of bring, yeah. So now we want to give opportunity to policymakers to reflect. Is this the right account of key takeaways when it comes to the policy side? As I said, there is another element on the research side, and it's going to be reflected in the symposium report, of course. But for this part, we thought, let's hear more from the policy perspective. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Precious. I know we were tired, but now we have some bandwidth to take the final, to do the final session. And before the policymakers come on board, so there are two things to do here. So from what the key takeaways we've received from my colleague, do you think these key takeaways resonate with what you feel as a government really needs to be done? So as you link them, we also had some participants online who also raised some reflections. And maybe let me use this just a minute to just point to some of the things you might need to respond to when you take the floor. The first one, so this really has been overemphasized, but maybe Mohamud, who was participating on LinkedIn, could be wondering what happened to his comment. He said, documents are essential for refugees to excel in their businesses. That's been really well captured and it's known. In YouTube, we had Alia, who said there's a new report that examines how policymakers and regulators can enhance access to finance for refugees. AFI report, AFI report. And then on YouTube, so we have the main challenge of refugees is that they don't want to work here. They want to go to Europe, USA, and Canada. So how can we deal with that? Maybe it's not, probably it's a question to all of us, not just the government. How can we deal with that? This notion that maybe it's better out there. Is it a notion or a reality? I don't know. Then, most refugees and hosts, especially youth, need to engage in short-term livelihood interventions, and they have no commitment in short-term jobs. I guess what the participant says is that probably we need to motivate them to take up whatever comes, whether short-term or long-term, all right? And then there are security issues, especially in Ethiopia, that are affecting interest in jobs. So the few jobs that are there, are they actually doable? Is the environment is the environment really conducive for the jobs to be done? And as I finish, from the sticky notes, we got very few of them. I wondered what happened. We know data is always scarce, so maybe this is what is happening. But we have one here. So demand for microcredit is on rise among refugees. So there is need to incentivize private sector with risk sharing. I think that point came also in one of the discussions, risk sharing facility. And then the question of capacity building, trainings are critical to equip refugees with business management skills. I think that's really been well captured. And something I think, this one I think is surprising to me, but probably not to those working in Uganda. So we see that refugees in Uganda are unable to get paid employment opportunities. Even in cases where refugees have to set up businesses, they find it so hard to get income, funding to sustain, to run the businesses. So, and I think we know Uganda has been progressive, but I'm wondering whether it has become like the case of Kenya, where, I'm wondering whether it is assumed because you are given land, then we are not giving employment, or you should not venture into this or that because you have land. Is that the case? I don't know, but the Uganda policymakers can be able to let us know. I know, like in Kenya, we were dealing with the question of women empowerment, and there was the 2/3 gender rule, and there were affirmative actions. I remember in the Constitution, I think there was created the position of women representative. So each county must have one woman representing the county. In the Senate. And then it was said, then the men said, then you don't need to fight for the other positions because you already have your positions, yeah? So positions were created, but this was used again as like, it was twisted to mean to the by the men to their advantage. So is this what is happening in Uganda? When you give land to refugees, is that really something that the space, the people in the space, the private sector, or the government feels like maybe you already have some advantage? And so let's hear from what the policymakers have to say. I'll begin with Uganda, actually. We have 2 or 3 people, but I don't know who will come first. I don't know, I was not informed of the protocol, but we have Lord Mayor, we have Endasho, and we have, I think, Sise. So whoever is coming first, please let us know from the key takeaways that we've been provided, and also from the participants online. What do you think really applies in your case? What do you think should be the way forward? Please. I think we'll start with the Lord Mayor. Still processing, huh?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Good. Endasho, and I'm sorry if I massacre these names.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Dasha from Ethiopia RRS protection team. First of all, I would like to thank, I think this is my last speech. I have no any chance after this time. Let me conclude my stay, 2 days stay here. Thank you very much, RC, World Bank, and who organized to gather us to share an experience of more than 65% of refugees reside in these 3 countries. So we learn a lot within these 2 days, thanks to the panelists, moderators, and all participants of the event. In my opinion, these takeaways are it's not different what about we are discussing still now. There are a problem. Whatever the level of debts are different, there are problems and a need to concern. So we can take it. But specifically in my concern, as a takeaway from a policymaker perspective, the major problem is not the issue of legal document what we have. In our discussions, most of us, we have a very beautiful commitment, regulations, directives, and so on. The problem is maybe implementations and the funds that are required to implement that directives. This is my concern. Because one of the takeaway, what we took is implementing properly the regulations and the directives which concern with refugees, asylum seekers, and host communities properly. The second, related with issues, the main point is what I have discussed is access to job creation and skill development, which may be very relevant with access to finance and the micro enterprise is. In regarding with access to job creation, like Ato Dababa, maybe Dr. Dababa said that Ethiopia has access to job, has its own directives, right to work. Still now, the labor market, more than 95,000 of refugees are access to job creation, access to job. In the directives, what the Ethiopian government ensured to them. But still, if you are in comparison with the number of refugees resides in Ethiopia, it's very small. We need to work more. But the finance issue, like any other countries that mentioned in the findings, the researchers are shown as, the Ethiopian government also need to take as a policy, strengthen the financial institutions of government in the private sectors, especially the microfinance, micro enterprises, to access the to access finance for the refugee supporting in the self-reliance, without ignoring mentorship. Because as far as in our experience, without mentorshiping of providing a finance to the refugees, nothing, but without mentoring and how to use and how to make profitable, how to become a self-reliant is important. We need to take the strengthening of private and the government microfinance access to refugees. The second is doing further assessment and a study on informal finance sectors and try to link with the formal one. The informal finance sectors within the refugees, how to link with formal finance sector to access and benefit the refugees and hosting communities. In general, this access to finance is through holistic approach of inclusion. What we are doing strongly now is service inclusion and finance. Every services what we are deliver for the refugee is in terms of the inclusion. Then, regarding with the another point of access to job creation is women empowerment should be considered. This is a lesson what we take. And another issue, creating a common understanding within the community, different level of government organization hierarchies and the private sectors. that is mentioned now by the take away for the policy takers, because the level of understanding and the level of we are viewing the refugees and the understanding of the refugee service in the country is different. All private sectors do not want to participate in the refugee sectors because, as you know, financial sectors are making a profit. So we need to include in the common understanding about the refugee services are delivered. So engaging this is important. We are taking as a takeaway. The next is maybe documentations. The documentation issue is importantly considered. The last but not the least is maybe the legal and the justice. The legal provision and the legal assistance for the refugee, for the social protection is very important. We can take it this as a takeaway. Finally, we look forward for the donors, my message. Whatever we have, a beautiful proclamations, a beautiful directives, and we are promised to improve the service. Without finance, nothing we do. So having a finance support is very essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Still on Ethiopia, I think there was a second person, Dr. Debebe. Did I massacre it, the name? I did? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, thank you.
Much has been said by my friend, and to summarize, a few points. For Ethiopia, a country hosting one of the largest refugee population in Africa, the key takeaway from this symposium is very crucial for improving, the lives of refugees and ensuring their integration into society. So, as my colleague said, this symposium has given us and opened our eyes to even to Ethiopia, the room for Ethiopia to can improve, its refugee policies by enhancing particularly the social protection. There were the recommendation from the researchers, but as my colleague said, we endorsed, the innovative policies and the strategies, but we lack, problems in implementation. And also, I think, the symposium has given to look into, access to justice in this morning discussion, and also economic inclusion, ensuring refugees have equal access to particularly health care, education, and the legal protection in this regard. So by integrating refugees into the labor market is also another area where Ethiopia can take in providing access to financial services, in the vocational training and entrepreneurship opportunities. And Ethiopia can also empower refugees to contribute economically. As a professor from Uganda said, the refugees are the opportunity for the hosting community. If really we niche that potential, I think we can realize the mutual benefit at the hosting country, as well as changing the life of the refugees. So with that, I would like to call upon the international communities here, like my friend, to strengthen our collaboration, in promoting community-based solutions, where to further support refugee integration while benefiting, the host communities. So through evidence-based policies, I would say Ethiopia can create a more inclusive environment that foster long-term stability and growth for both refugees and the citizens. I thank you, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's applaud him. Thank you so much. I'm told that comments from the Deputy Commissioner Kenya and the Lord Mayor Uganda, they'll make them as they do the closing during the, so I need to be guided. Are we doing the closing now? Or should we call them? All right, yeah, please wrap up. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the remarks that have been made. As I said, this is going to be reflected in the symposium report, and the remarks that have been made. I think we've captured the contributions that you've made, and it's going to be included. So thank you so much for that. I just wanted to take advantage before I hand over the mic to the next program, just to sort of take a moment on behalf of the World Bank, but also on behalf specifically of the Kenya Analytical Program on Forced Displacement. We call it CAPFD, on behalf of the team, just to really express our gratitude to everybody who's contributed to making this symposium a huge success. I think first and foremost, just to say thank you to all the speakers, the moderators, the panelists, the MCs, everybody who's sort of taken the mic, both from the floor, but also for during sort of scheduled discussions. So thank you so much for that. I think the issues that you've raised and the insights that you've shared have really sort of deepened our understanding and inspired, I would say, new avenues for research and policy development in the forced displacement space. So a round of applause to everybody that has spoken here. I also just wanted to take a moment to thank the policymakers, because I think what we've learned during this symposium is really they are sort of pushing the frontier when it comes to the socio-economic inclusion of refugees. I think it's not an easy task. And both from the research and the policy perspective, I think that has been clear that there is a lot of considerations, a lot of trade-offs, and a lot of constraints that they are dealing with. So we just want to thank the policymakers specifically, thank all the government officials that are represented here with all the protocols being very observed. For me, I think what is encouraging is just a strong commitment to this agenda. And I think yesterday, if I remember correctly, it was the Deputy Commissioner of Refugee Affairs in Kenya who said that as researchers, we need to be deliberate about co-creating the research agenda, but also the research itself with government, because in any case, they are the ones that will have to implement, and we've heard that today as well. So I think that relationship, of course, is important to strengthening the link between research and policy making. So a big round of applause to the policymakers, government officials, national, sub-national. So thank you so much for that. Of course, I mean, the symposium would not be a success without attendees or participants. So thank you so much. I think it's been a very active and engaging crowd. You've sort of asked the questions, you've shared your experiences, you have contributed to discussions, and I think that has really contributed to a very, very rich symposium. So let us give ourselves a big round of applause again. Thank you. I also just want to take a moment to thank the organizing committee and of course the volunteers, everybody that has been working behind the scenes. I believe that there's going to be more vote of thanks that are going to be more specific, but just to say thank you for that, and just to say to Priscilla, to Belinda, to Irene, to the entire IRC family and the Rebuild family, thank you so much for considering us as the conveners or the co-conveners of this symposium. We've learned a lot from the interaction. We've appreciated the learning that has come with it. And truth be told, I think you've really done the heavy lifting, so we need to be honest about that. So thank you so much to you. Thank you to the IKEA Foundation for the support, and of course to all the sponsors and the partners rather that have been involved. So thank you. We thank you to the organizing committee. I also just want to thank the Welbeck colleagues that have also contributed to the success. We have a full team that is here today. Mirko, Neville, Antonia, Patrick, I believe there is Lynn and Anne also outside. Yesterday we had Miguel who offered the keynote address. We also had Farah, but just to say, obviously there is a bigger team that has contributed to what we've shared today. But as I said, also there is even a bigger team that works in this space. It is an open invitation for us also to connect you with very sector-specific teams within the bank. But as I said as well, a very open invitation to collaborate and foster partnerships. What we see as the aim of CAPFD is, of course, to build the evidence, but also to foster partnerships of everybody that is working on this space. So very excited about that. So really appreciating the team. Thank you. So I think just to say that, of course, we hope that the conversations that started today are going to sort of result in meaningful, for lack of a better word, meaningful engagement when it comes to forced displacement research and policy. And just to say, we are very grateful to refugee-led organizations, as I think I've shared in different fora that they sort of hold us accountable in terms of realizing that what we do, refugees, host communities, should be at the center of what we do. So Mohammed was here yesterday. I don't think he's in today. He also reminded that. And thanks, of course, to the refugee community also that sort of participated. My good sister Jane. I think there was also some others from the refugee community that have shared their experiences. And as I said, I think thanks for that reminder that as we engage and as we involve and co-create evidence with the refugee communities, we of course need to make sure that we treat that experience with the same dignity and respect we sort of afford to any human story. So thank you so much for that reminder. As I conclude, I just want to reiterate that as the World Bank and as the CAPFD team, we remain committed to building evidence and partnerships, as I said, that enhance the welfare and the welfare of refugees and host communities, and we welcome opportunities to collaborate. So thank you so much. I'm going to end by saying that I hope that as a collective, we sort of commit to institutionalizing this sort of engagement. Maybe every year we should be getting together, bring more partners to be able to have a platform such as this one. And who knows, we could also think about having that rotate across the different countries. So it's just to, I'm hoping that as we wrap up at some point, somebody gets us to commit to that, because I believe that we can make it. So thank you again, asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Precious, and thank you very much, World Bank, for that particular session. In my place of work, I don't invite government officers. So if you see me shaking, just know this is a different territory. So I think we come to a close where then we get the closing remarks and reflections. And so we'll begin from the government of Ethiopia, Mr. Enoch Ketema, the advisor to the state minister. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. It's my pleasure and honor to thank all honorable guests, respective delegates who have been here with us for the last 2 days on this timely and crucial research and policy symposium. My special thanks goes to the IRC Rebuilding Program, IKEA Foundation, and World Bank. Senior management here, country team, directors, and other conference organizing team who have been facilitating the symposium titled from evidence policy, research, and policymaking. I'm delighted to see the active participation of many development partners, policymakers, practitioners, and researchers. My sincere thanks goes to all representatives for sharing their constructive and strategic insight and recommendation. Distinguished participants, your continued active involvement underscores your pivotal role as partner in the dialogue. Thank you for your valuable contribution and your ongoing commitment. I extend my gratitude and appreciation to all the moderators and invited speakers who have made the discussion lively and thought-provoking. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience and making deliberation truly exceptional. Your expertise has reached our dialogue. I thank you for your contribution. Over the last 2 days, we have engaged in highly productive discussion, sharing our common commitment, which is very critical for our people and refugee community. However, we acknowledge the significant challenge related to governance, capacity, system, and resources that stand ahead of us. We have collectively agreed to key strategic system and policy change in the sectors. This includes, 1, establishing the government lead country level platform that will anchor planning, coordination, and monitoring sectors depending on each country's strategy. Adopting regular framework that enables refugees to access documentation, and promoting the inclusion of refugees in national social protection system and expanding the economic dimension of refugee. Addressing the government bottlenecks at the sector level that hinders progress in the refugee livelihood and economic inclusion effects. And the third, realign sector-wide initiatives. Mobilizing additional funding, especially from private sector and climate finance, and finally, designing systems that are resilient to climate and disaster-related challenges and also digitalized. In our 2 days deliberation, we delved into this pivotal issue and outlined our forward-looking initiative and action on our communique. We have committed to develop a national roadmap to accelerate access to finance. However, this goal requires collective efforts and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to assure you that both my ministry, Ministry of Finance, Ethiopia, and RRS pledge on behalf of the federal government of Ethiopia to pay serious attention on this agenda. Last but not least, I extend my gratitude to all those who have worked tirelessly day and night to make this event to a reality and successful. I kindly request you to join me in giving a warm round of applause to delegated group and individual behind this sense. I hope I have to mention the group behind this sense, IRC Rebuild Program, IKEA Foundation, World Bank, the government of Kenya for supporting this important event, the government of Uganda, and the government of Ethiopia to active participation on this important event, moderators, speakers, production team, as well as Master of Ceremony. I hope you had a nice and enjoyable stay in Nairobi. For those who come from outside Kenya, I wish all safe journey back home. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, sir. We are highly indebted by the Ethiopian delegation that found its way here in the active participation. What has been observed from yesterday is that we are honored from the country of Uganda to host his worship, the mayor amidst us. So welcome your worship to give us your remarks.
I salute you all, dear participants, in your respective capacities. Before I make my remarks,
and reflections on what has transpired in the last 2 days. Allow me register my twofold concern. Should we call it injustice meted out against me? I hope Priscilla here and my brother Brian here won't take offense. You know, from my training as a lawyer in my profession, lawyers submit first and judges come later to crown it up. So to put me here before my Lord, I feel like bowing and say, I'm sorry, my Lord. But I salute you, Justice Douglas Singiza, and the entire team. The other aspect is about the way it was structured. When I got the invite and the theme, what ran through my mind was that it's going to be a dialogue between policymakers and researchers. But I don't want to say it turned out to be a monologue for researchers, but you have dominated the space. For the last 2 days, you have really pumped us with your research, and we do appreciate. I think it was, on a hindsight, a good strategy, so that we sit here as listening posts. Indeed, I was just comfortably seated listening to your wonderful ideas, so that we reflect on the same and come up with good policies. Thank you for the wonderful research you have conducted in this very intricate area. It's not that easy. It's not so much appetizing. I had somebody who was saying, you know, from Ethiopia, they were saying they are only 100,000. They are insignificant. Not insignificant, they are not so much. And that is the reality. In Kampala, 150,000. It seems to be a big number because that is 10% of the number of refugees we have in the entire country. Approximately 10%, because we have 1.7 and 154 comes close. Even Kenya here, Nairobi, I think it's the same story. But that said, what I gather from here as part of my reflections, one, in terms of policy direction, seems we are generating consensus that we need to drift away from camps to integration. That gives me, I don't know whether I'm getting the mood wrong, but that gives me courage. For how long shall we continue putting people, herding them like cattle, and keeping them in squalid conditions? You've heard in Chiriandongo, for the last 15 years, your family is caged in a camp. Totally unacceptable. I think from here, as one of the takeaways, how do we operationalize that? How do we realize this and say we need to get away from this idea of putting refugees in the camps and have them integrated in society? In Uganda, you are told by my team here, it is part of the processes we are working on. It's integrated within NDP4, National Development Plan 4, part of Vision 2040, that integration mechanism, but it is still elusive. We need to focus so much on it. There are a number of programs lined up. I don't have time. Had I been given adequate time, next time we organize it, Priscilla. 2 days, researchers. 1 day for policymakers. Then we come up with a verdict, a judgment. I wish we had the whole day as policymakers, because now I have to rush through all this. Anyway, NDP4 includes some refugee integration in service provisions like education, health services, social protection, GBU, livelihood program. We have some programs as part of the integration mechanism. And most recently, we came up with a GROW project, which is funded by World Bank, and we must thank you very much, for some cash transfers to women, and 30% would have to go to refugees. We are going to implement it up to 2027. And a couple of other programs and initiatives or interventions that have been mentioned to you here. But what we need to do at a subnational level, we still have serious challenges. Very, very serious challenges. You see, when the refugees get out of the camps, at a national level, they are considered to be now self-reliant. Go, you're on your own. And they end up in cities. They end up in Kampala, where we are yet to develop a concrete policy. It is still work in progress. And as Justice here observed, financing is not structured. We do not, it's not institutionalized. Refugee interventions are not institutionalized within our planning systems. I don't want to deceive you that we have a budget line in our program-based budgeting system for refugees. No, it's not there. Even the docket that is handling it, it is just gender, what, and so on and so forth. So we need to reflect critically on that, and I request we will facilitate a process where we can have a policy framework for good practices, a common policy for all these hosting cities, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Kampala, and a couple of others, so that we can have those common practices as a policy instrument. We need one where we have clear policies on how to integrate it. And also this phenomena, this model of entrepreneurship model, still a new phenomena. Yes, Rebuild is implementing it in Uganda, but we need to do more research. These 2 days have had impact on me to study deep, to get more information about it. And thank you for that. We need more information about it. Because for us, that is a serious tool, weapon, towards implementing this policy of integration. I must tell you, that's the only way to go. Yes, we are developing some programs where we want to have refugees self-reliant. We have our agriculture pilot project. It's a place called Chanja. We are coming up with a policy where we can get them involved into urban agriculture to grow food for themselves, because you can't grow food when you're in camps. And also surplus for sale. There is a framework, a good framework for urban agriculture. We want to encourage them, to invite them to get involved in urban agriculture. But that is at a micro level. So we need to have a clear policy on that, and we are working on it very much. So the information we are gathering from here is going to feed so much into our policy making process. Allow me just a few observations here, because I'm taking a lot of your time. Now, you have also invited us to deal with the regulatory barriers. This is a very serious takeaway for us. These barriers. For the last 2 days, actually, we have been recounting what the ordeal the refugees go through to access employment, to get in another labor market, to get registration, to get IDs, to get all this. We are going to seriously. I've been telling my team here, we need to reflect critically on this. The other one is about harnessing the available opportunities within the existing legal framework. The judge here has really challenged us. Why do we look at refugees as a liability? When they under you, ideas were running through my mind. And say, we come face to face on a daily basis with experts from Sudan. On a daily, they are in Kampala here. And many of them actually, some are coming from Eritrea, I don't know, people who are coming, they are using Kampala as a transient station for, en route to Canada. Many of them from Eritrea. Kampala is a stopover to Canada. We have to tap into this. Justice, thank you for that. Then institutional weaknesses. Oh, this is a very serious one. I don't have time to elaborate on it, but it's important that we deal with it. To the extent that we have not been able to directly implement ourselves the refugee interventions. And this has had some challenges. It has invited lots of challenges to us. Because we didn't have the capacity, we are trying now to build the capacity, we didn't have capacity to implement our own interventions. We had to rely largely on refugee-led organizations. And we have encountered problems with that. Personally, I'm proud to tell you that I am a member of the leadership board of the Mayor's Migration Council. It is based in New York. We started it in 2018, and every year we meet. We have sideline meetings. Every year UN is sitting. As a mayor, we have that platform globally. It is sponsored, it's funded by IKEA. Thank you very much. IKEA is one of the Open Society Foundations, Hilton, and a couple of other financiers. Even last year I was here, we prepared our commitments and were supposed to take them to the Global Refugee Forum, to Switzerland. And I was there in Switzerland. Now, the challenges we encountered are twofold here. We came as a platform of mayors with a return of our pledges and commitments and expectations. Reaching there, they said, hey, but now who are these ones? I'm sorry to tell you this, it could be domestic, but now they said, who accredited you? Accreditation is by countries. The Prime Minister said, yeah, in my team I don't have these ones. But we said, look here, we also have our platform at a sub-national level. We have our own platform. He said, you know, we had our meeting, our sideline meeting, as mayors, and returned to our respective countries or cities with all our packages. But it's a very serious platform. And I would tell you in cash transfer. Hilton, this is now the second challenge we are getting as I conclude. The second challenge we are getting. Hilton gave us, as Kampala, through that platform, $500,000 in form of cash transfer to give it out to the refugees, to facilitate with education, health care, and whatnot. Now, because of institutional challenges, we could not administer it ourselves. Now we had to enlist services of a refugee-led NGO called Makasi. It's named after some refugee who had come to Uganda and started this organization. Now when this money landed on their account, it's a windfall. These guys, the leaders of the NGO, just pocketed the money and fled to the US. The whole of it. The whole of it. Now we had to go back to the funder here tonight. The money you gave us. Now, they listen to us finally again. Under the same arrangement, there is a Global Cities Fund under the same platform. At least we have gotten another cash transfer. We are now struggling to see how to manage it. Ourselves, we are inadequate. We have no capacity. We are still building capacity. Now, the NGO-led, you also, you check yourselves. You said now, how do we? So, you can see we are placed between a rock and a hard surface, and the ideas we are getting from here, and those are areas of research you need to help us in the future. How do we manage as an institution? And finally, the bureaucracy. Get us to understand how we can directly access funding. Because we are talking access to finance. At a sub-national level, we have struggled to enhance our capacity. We have struggled to amplify our voice. Because at a UN level now, we are forced to reckon with. When we meet all the mayors from Canada, from the US, from Europe, from wherever, all the city mayors are part of this forum. Now, when you leverage that platform to get support for the refugees back home, you have hurdles. We are not allowed to directly access funding. I cannot, for example, right now approach IKEA. I can't approach World Bank. I cannot do that. I listened to the commissioner here. He was asking for grants and interest-free loans from World Bank. But for us, we have been sourcing around and getting this. But now they are telling us approval has to be done by the president. Approval has to be done by the president. Those of you who can interact with the leadership of our platform, the Mayor's Migration, there is a lot of frustration. So you help us do some research on how we can beat this bureaucracy. So that because on a daily basis, we are interacting with these refugees. The first point of entry in KCCA in Kampala is the office of the Lord Mayor. They are there. I am the one to direct them to UNHCR. And now we have our own employment bureau, employment services bureau. We are coming up with the ideas of coming up with a desk for refugees. For information, because we are talking about information flow, guiding them on this paperwork, documentation, and whatnot. All that requires institutionalized functioning of the institution. Now we have this bureaucracy. You cannot access that money. So the last one, the very last one, is now I would ask the very last one, research. I ask you help us conduct research in this phenomena which is bothering some of us. Weaponization, political weaponization of the refugee crisis. It's a reality. I am speaking from experience. They have told you our figures, 1,708,000. But at some stage we were subjected to scrutiny. UNHCR said, but are these numbers inflated? Aren't you scheming for something? They questioned the numbers, the statistics. Now we are in doubt. We hoped that from the recent census, which was conducted this year, we would get some genuine statistics. I don't want to delve into our domestic problems. So now, weaponization of this, and it is causing us problems back home politically. I'm speaking as a political leader. It causes some resentments. Some people think that maybe there are political overtones, undertones over this. When you hype so much refugee intervention programs, they say, there's politics to this. And don't you want to use them in voting, in what? How do we guard against this? I need some research personally to understand this. We should not weaponize we shouldn't use it as a political weapon for our political machinations. So help us get some concrete research on how we can do this. And the very, very last one now, the very, very last one, research on how we can deal with the question, because all through the discussion here, I didn't hear about dealing with the drivers of the refugee crisis. And I was in Marrakesh in 2018 when we were launching those two compacts, the GCR Global Compact on refugees and the Global Compact on migrants. And we highlighted the drivers. He said, now let's focus, let us pay attention to the drivers of the refugee crisis. We are now, yes, it's good now to deal with the mitigation, but now we are administering Panadol on a cancerous or malignant problem. How do we deal with the drivers? And when we talk about drivers, you quickly focus on climate change because it is the low-hanging fruit, the easiest one. You don't want to deal with the conflicts, political conflicts. I request you researchers, help us, please, kindly help us. How can you, the refugee-led organizations, play an active role in dealing with the drivers of the refugee crisis, in conflict management? Don't leave it to us, the politicians. May God bless you. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Worship, for taking the burden of refugee inclusion with you. We equally agonize with you on this particular journey, and it's good for us, all of us, to see how we can be able to play our part. I welcome the Deputy Commissioner for Refugee Affairs in Kenya to give us his reflections and also thank his colleagues from across the two other countries.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, for those insightful remarks. Colleagues, delegates still with us today. Good evening. Yeah, I know most of us would be here physically, but we have taken several mental trips, wondering in the next 10 minutes where you will be, those of us who are maybe planning to catch a flight back home or by road, or just to see the environs of Nairobi before the sun goes down. And so I want to promise that I'll take the shortest time possible. First, on the reflections, the key takeaways. The first one was advancement in legal frameworks. And this is a very, very positive takeaway move. And in Kenya, we have made strides. We have the Refugee Act 2021, which has really opened a space for refugee inclusion. And somehow it is the one that gave birth to the Sharika plan I was talking about yesterday. And we have also developed the regulations thereon to help us implement the act. And so with this act, refugees will benefit. This move is not a day's journey. It is a process. And we have to bear in mind that even Kenyans themselves are also even struggling to get some services. So imagine somebody from outside. But the bottom line is that everybody must be included. And so right now we are working on a refugee policy. Normally it should be the policy coming first and then the act and the regulations, but now we made a mistake. We are now working on the policy last. Maybe by mid next year, we will have a refugee policy in place. And all this is geared towards ensuring that refugees get space just like any other citizen or anybody in Kenya, and that they are not discriminated against. Refugee inclusion, as the judge from Uganda was putting it, this is the way to go. Again, I will reiterate what I said yesterday. These are our brothers and sisters from the region. And in Kenya, as you are informed, we have also tried in the social protection sector. They can now register for NSSF, malipo ya uzeeni, we call it in Kenya, payment in old age. In terms of health insurance, just like any other Kenyan, if they contribute, then they will get treatment through the social health network. In terms of education, refugee children are attending our public schools. And just early this month, we had a meeting with World Bank. World Bank is sponsoring a program we call KPIL in Kenya. And they graciously agreed to sponsor, to roll it out in refugee hosting counties of Turkana and Dadaab. This is Kenya Primary Equity in Early Learning. And so, in partnership with the government has now agreed to take over all those schools in refugee camps. The government will be posting, Teacher Service Commission will be posting government teachers there. UNHCR and other partners will be looking into the infrastructure aspect, but teachers will be from the government. And so this is also equally a positive move to ensure that the curriculum which is administered there is acceptable in accordance with the government education policy. Strengthening data ecosystem. In the present society, you cannot make a decision or a policy if you don't have the data or statistics. The good thing is that figures don't lie. So if you have correct figures, then be assured that you will make a correct decision or you will make develop a good policy, including private sector. Again, a very, very much welcomed move. I want to recognize MasterCard. They are very, very instrumental in the refugee management field. Right now, they're sponsoring quite a good number of refugee students at UCU University, fully sponsored, and other aspects of education. So these are very, very positive moves, and we are calling upon many other private sector players to come in and help us ensure that refugees get the best. The bottom line again here is that nobody runs away from home unless the home has become mouth of a shark. So normally home is best. So if you see somebody in a foreign land, just try to imagine the kind of problems they are running away from. It is serious. And so we should not add other problems of discriminating against them. So as Kenyan government, we are open, positive in terms of refugee management. We are calling upon all players from whichever sector. Please let us join hands together to ensure that before they go home, our ultimate goal is that they will go back home. But before then, let us give them the best. In Kenya, we are talking about third-generation refugees. They were born here. They have gone through our education system. In fact, if they go back home, there would be more of refugees back at home than in Kenya. Some of them don't even understand the local language. So these are the people we're talking about, and inclusion is very, very vital. These people are not a burden. Give them opportunity, and they will participate in nation building. You go to Kakuma right now, we have millionaires. Yes, we have refugee millionaires in Kakuma. Last time, the Danish government visited here, and we took them there, and we were being taken round. You are told this is from DRC Congo. He's running a multi-million business. He's a millionaire. Somalis are there running big businesses. So what they lack, just the opportunity. And these opportunities, the good environment can only be created if we give them better policies that will ensure that they thrive and compete competitively with the rest of Kenyans. Back to the end of the session. We have been here for 2 days, ladies and gentlemen, discussing a very, very pertinent issue pertaining to refugees, inclusion, and policy which follows. Papers have been presented. We have been shown a lot of data here, as Lord Mayor was saying. But we have to translate this data into a proper policy. Let me call upon countries represented here, Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia. Probably we should also start thinking of having a common policy on refugee management. It is important because the whole Horn of Africa is affected. It is our region, and so it would be better, maybe not for now, but to start thinking the next few years to come. We have a regional policy on refugee management. Statistics don't lie, so whatever, as government, we are going to ensure that we incorporate where possible so that we realign the policies with the targets we want to achieve in terms of policy management. Cooperation and coordination is also very, very important. But most importantly, I would reiterate what the Lord Mayor said. The push factors. The other time we were in Uganda, Munyonyo, and I posed this question. We talk about regional conflict, and all the leaders were there, the ministers, and we were talking of how we can stop the war. You know, before you raise an alarm, take for example as a family, you have your small squabbles. Why don't you just sit down there and sort it out, even without the children knowing what is happening? Dialogue, that is what I'm talking about. Let us not take hard-line stands, and eventually it is the children and vulnerable women and old people who will suffer. People trekking over 700 kilometers, running away from persecution. Let us start thinking along those lines. Let us give peace a chance. We can fight for 100 years, but what will be the result? So I agree with the Lord Mayor. Let us look at the push factors. That is the main cause. I agree with you. We are treating cancer with Panadol, and then the result will be death. So time is running up. I want to thank you very much for your active participation, and let us also endeavor, maybe after 2.5 years, the organizers will come back here to review again, where are we? Are we on the right path? Did we do the right thing? Where we went wrong, we correct, so that at the end of it, we have the best in terms of policy management for our refugees in the region. Otherwise, with those many remarks, once again, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of us for your patience, active participation, the researchers, the organizers, our honorable judge from Uganda. You have been here with us throughout. We don't take that for granted. I know you have a lot. Maybe you could have carried your laptop writing some judgments, but you have concentrated on this, and we don't take it for granted. Thank you very much. As we leave Nairobi, please have journey masses, but I would request that you take a day or two just to move around and enjoy the beauty of Nairobi, the city in the sun. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, sir. I will invite the last speaker to just give a vote of thanks so that we can leave. Welcome, Elijah.
Good evening, everyone. I know energy is down, and I'm standing between you and freedom. But please join me to appreciate the three governments for being with us for these 2 days, for their really very thoughtful remarks. The government of Kenya, of Ethiopia, and of Uganda, please, a round of applause. Just to confirm, I had a speech to read, but I'll not read it because of time, and everything that I would have said has already been said. On behalf of IRC family, I just want to say thank you so much for making these 2 days valuable because of rich participation. I want to thank all the researchers, all the presenters. Really, it was a great investment of our time together. I want to really thank IKEA Foundation for making it possible in partnership with the World Bank and all the collaborators, all the institutions, organizations that actively participated in putting this together. Truly, truly thank you. We also appreciate those who joined online. They are not here maybe, but they have contributed also immensely. So thank you so much. As we travel back, we wish all of us safe trip. I'll let her continue. We are going to see to it that there will be a second phase of this research and policy symposium. And there's already actually a very rich content through what is being proposed, what could form part of the next thinking, and how we can focus more on policy. I like the Lord Mayor's inspiration that in his mind when he was coming, he would thought researchers will be on one side and then the policy makers will be on one side, then we can talk. We face off. And that would have been actually lovely. So there are a lot of good ideas on what we can do next time when we make the second phase of this. Otherwise, thank you very much from the country that hosted me, I would say, for my God and my country. And asanteni sana. God bless you. Have a wonderful time in Nairobi, and as you travel outside of Nairobi, also safe journey. Thank you very much. I'm told that I left one word which says you're dismissed. So we are free to live at our own pleasure. Thank you very much.